could, what? Crochet. Blah, 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 blah. What? Why did I say that? The different searches. Fuck. Handmade crochet. Handmade crochets? Type is handmade plussies. Why? What is wrong with me? Okay. That's better. Hello my friends, welcome to another video. In today's video, we're gonna talk about AI again. I did a video not that long ago about how AI is used to find intellectual property in things like crochet plushies and crochet patterns. I'll link it here if you haven't seen it. But as I mentioned in that video, AI is a tool, and I think just like any other tool, it can be used for good things and it can be used for not so great things. So in today's video, we are going to see if we can use the AI tool for some good and help me out with a few things I need to get ready for my markets. I am 14 weeks out to my first fall market. There should be 2, hopefully. And I have been racking my brain trying to figure out what I need to do about my pricing. I have mentioned it probably ad nauseum. And I don't necessarily mean each particular item, but kind of what things am I going to even carry, because I'm really enjoying some of these bigger makes like Clubs the Clown and some of the things that are a little bit higher on the price point side, but I wasn't sure, how much of my inventory should be what. I know I need to make minis. I know I need to make some lower price items, some entry tier items, but I was really trying to figure out what should that strategy be. I put the same prompt in 4 different AI tools to see what they came up with and see if there was one that I liked better than the others or wanted to combine all of the strategies. These are 4 tools that I use very regularly, so I thought I would really quickly share what those tools are and how I generally use them. The first one is ChatGPT, and I think this is one that a lot of people are familiar with. I often use ChatGPT when I am trying to ideate or do something kind of fun, come up with catchy names and things like that. It has a history of all of my conversations since when I first started thinking about doing all of this, and I was trying to figure out the name, and I combined a few things that it came up with to come up with Enchanted Skein. And, I just use that as a tool to almost kind of like throw stuff out of my brain and see what it comes back with, usually more on the fun side. Then there's Claude. I use Claude on a regular basis when it comes to putting things together that are in written form. So if I'm creating product descriptions or information for my website or anything that's going to be in kind of written form, I use Claude for. I feel like it's less casual, but still casual enough compared to ChatGPT, and I just like the overall presentation of how it comes out with the different content. Next up is Gemini, and this is Google's brand of AI if you haven't already used it. In your Google search bar, you'll see there's AI mode. If you click that, you're essentially chatting with Gemini. And I often use this when I do need to search or research something. Oftentimes in any of these AI platforms, the large language model that it's using and its understanding and learnings are a snapshot in time that's previous to today. And I just seem to find that Google's Gemini goes a little step further when you're asking to search something into the current time without having to ask it to, versus the other platforms you have to really say, go search for and get me a current number of and that sort of thing. And last but not least is Copilot. Copilot is Microsoft's AI platform, and I don't use it at all for personal reasons. I only use that at work because that is one of the most accessible tools for us. Out of all 4, it's the one I least enjoy. It could be because I use it at work, but also it's just got so many guardrails. It seems to be overprotective of things, and it's kind of like, calm down. I'm not trying to do anything crazy. So yeah, it's something that I do use very regularly at work when it's like search my emails for something or check my meeting notes and things like that. So it's super handy for that, but I don't ever use it in my normal day-to-day life. I've got my computer in front of me, so I am going to be looking down to read some things to you. I also have some printouts from the different platforms that I have some snippets highlighted that I want to share with you as well, because I found some of this really interesting and I'm hoping you do too. Let's start with the prompt. I put the exact same prompt into all 4 of these platforms, and if you're curious or want to try this for yourself and make some tweaks to it so it's applicable to you, I have it linked in a Google Doc. You can just click on that, copy, change it, paste it in whatever you want, if you want to give it a try and see what it spits out in your particular case. So here's what I put in the prompt. You are a retail pricing strategist with expertise in craft markets, handmade goods, and crochet plushies, aka amigurumi. I'm a small business owner who sells crochet plushies at an in-person market, such as local craft fairs, farmers markets, and small events. Your task is to recommend an optimal distribution of price buckets for my inventory to maximize sales volume, revenue, and customer conversion. Important. I am not asking for individually priced items. I want a percentage-based distribution of my total inventory across price ranges or buckets. For example, 25% of the inventory should be priced at $5 to $10, etc. Percentages must total 100. A little context about my business. The product type is handmade crochet plushies or amigurumi. My audience is mixed: children, teens, adults, gift buyers. Market type: in-person craft market. Impulse buying is important. Products vary in size and complexity. My makes are sometimes unconventional, leaning to fantasy or enchanted, etc. My makes are always top quality. I want to balance affordability with profitability. I do not want all low-priced items. I want a healthy mix to encourage upgrades. I currently offer a $5 mini plushie category, and I cannot significantly expand this category. Do not over-allocate inventory to the lowest priced tier, since I cannot produce a larger volume of $5 items. My goal is to avoid having too many very low-priced items and instead encourage customers to purchase mid-range items. What I want you to do. Number 1, recommend 4 to 6 price buckets. Number 2, assign a percentage of total inventory to each bucket, totaling 100. Number 3, base your suggestions on consumer behavior at craft markets, impulse pricing psychology, handmade product pricing trends, upselling, and anchoring strategies. Number 4, for each price bucket, briefly explain why the price range exists, what type of items typically belong there, and what role it plays in the overall sales strategy. Number 5, include strategic insights such as entry-level pricing to attract buyers, a sweet spot where most sales are likely to occur, a higher-end anchor item to increase perceived value. Number 6, if helpful, also suggest ideal balance between small and large items and common pricing distribution mistakes that handmade sellers often make. Output format. Start with a clear table, price range, percentage of inventory, and the purpose. Include concise explanation for the sections with insight and reasoning. Then include suggestions. Do not ask follow-up questions, make reasonable assumptions, and give your best expert recommendation using available knowledge of craft markets and handmade goods. If you are wondering, yes, I did use AI to help me come up with that. I looked up a few things and pieced some of it together. There are prompt coaches out there that will help you get a prompt together for what you're trying to do. And I utilized that as well as made my own tweaks in there to make it more along the lines of what I was looking for. What they came out with was pretty interesting. They were a lot alike in certain ways and very different in others. Let's go over the price buckets that each one of them gave me. ChatGPT gave me the first bucket of $5 to $9 with 10% of my inventory, $10 to $18 with 30% of my inventory, $19 to $30 with 35% of my inventory, $31 to $50 at 18% of my inventory, and $51 to $80 and over at 7% of my inventory. Not sure why it's 51 to 80 and over. It would just be greater than 51, but sure. Claude gave me the first tier at $5 to $8, 10%, $12 to $18, 30%, $20 to $28 at 30%, $30 to $45 at 20%, $50 to $75 and greater, 10%. Gemini gave me a flat $5, which I'm assuming should go up to $11 based on the next bucket, at 10% of my inventory, $12 to $18 at 25% of my inventory, $25 to $40, 45% of my inventory, $45 to $65 at 15% of my inventory, and $75 and over, 5% of my inventory. And Copilot gave me, again, a $5 bucket, 8% of my inventory, $10 to $15, 28% of my inventory, $18 to $25, 32% of my inventory, $28 to $40, 22% of my inventory, and $45 to $70 and over, 10% of my inventory. The percentages were kind of funny because Claude did increments of 10, Gemini did increments of 5, and the other two were kind of weird and seemed to have no rhyme or reason. The one place they kind of aligned was that they thought the smallest bucket of my inventory should be around 10%. Their advice had some common themes: that low barrier entry points are good to have to draw people in, not to overload with too low of price items, showstoppers are good to have, a broad range feels artisan, and market customers are looking to buy, especially at paid events. When I stepped back and read through all of these, and one of them was 6 pages long, I really liked what Claude had to say. Let me read you a few snippets from some of these. Let's start with Copilot. So I'm going to read you a few things that I highlighted here. So one of them was that it said that the high price items start at $45 and that their anchor and premium conversions show pieces to raise perceived effort of everything else and may be an occasional big win. Which, I mean, it's true to a certain extent, but it's kind of funny. One thing I didn't like was it was like what its role in the strategy for the entry items was traffic stoppers. Get people to pause and touch your work. Want a tiny companion for $5? Turns a sale into 20 or 25 without friction. I have yet to see that with a minis bucket, but sure. The other thing I found interesting about Copilot is it made a lot of assumptions without having any information as to the cost behind my products. It basically said that my profit margins are strongest in my $10 to $25 products. How do you know that? You don't. So it made a lot of assumptions. I didn't read you the whole thing. It's very boring. And a lot of its information just was like wild guessing to me. So that is why Copilot was the last on the list. Then we go to ChatGPT. ChatGPT made an assumption that my primary revenue sweet spot was the $19 to $30 items. And while that's an assumption, that might actually be true. Because when I think about when I choose to price something way higher than that, it's usually because it was a heck of a lot of work or has a lot of materials involved in it. And when I think about things that fall in the $20 to $25 range, if I think about the material costs involved in those, it's not much more than a $10 or $25 item when it comes to like grams of yarn and stuff. It may be a little more complex or just comes out a little larger. So I kind of feel like they were onto something with that, but I have zero data to prove it. There were a couple of things that it said that I did find really interesting. One of them was about the $5 to $10 category, and it basically said many makers overload this category and accidentally train customers to expect cheap handmade work. I cannot argue with that one. It also said that the $10 to $18 range makes buyers feel like they're making a casual purchase, and that the true sweet spot was the $19 to $30 range for handmade plushies, especially fantasy enchanted styles with strong craftsmanship. It said it was a combination of perceived value, profitability, and emotional purchasing. When a customer sees $60 items nearby, the one they're looking at suddenly feels reasonable. It also mentions that there's an increased perception of artistic legitimacy. And when it came to giving recommendations about mistakes and avoiding them, it said too many low-priced items can reduce perceived quality. Too much clutter lowers premium perception. A slightly curated fantasy boutique feel is often more profitable than a table packed with tiny crochet. All right, let's look at Gemini. Gemini says the impulse sweet spot is the $12 to $18 range, and similar to GPT, the core revenue driver is the $25 to $40 range. And for that price bucket, it had me at 45% of my inventory. And it says allocating nearly half your inventory here shifts the customer's mindset away from cheap trinkets toward artisan goods. In the common pitfalls area, it says the 60-40 visual rule. Aim for a physical footprint where 60% of your table space features your mid to high tier items, 25 and up, and 40% houses your lower tiers. Elevate the art. Place your $5, $12, and $18 items flat or near the table with baskets where children can easily reach them. Use risers and vertical shelving to display your unconventional fantasy pieces at adult eye level to command higher pricing. It also says the race to the bottom trap. Many handmade sellers stock 70% of their booth with $10 and under items. This attracts bargain hunters, requires exhausting production schedules, and actively repels high-paying customers. Avoid clustering items around a single flat price, i.e. everything's 20 bucks. Without variances, customers face choice paralysis because they can't weigh the value of the differences. Distinct price buckets guide the buyer's journey seamlessly from curiosity to purchase. And here's some that I highlighted from Claude. It says that the $12 to $18 bucket is the core volume driver, and the sweet spot for revenue is $20 to $28. For that core driver, it says this is your bread and butter impulse tier. Customers at farmers markets and craft fairs feel completely comfortable with spending $12 to $18 on handmade items without second guessing themselves. And that falls very much in line with the pricing buckets that Gemini had. Similarly to Gemini, it stated that the $20 to $28 was the sweet spot, and it says this tier is where your unconventional / enchanted aesthetic starts to really shine because buyers are making more deliberate decisions and leaning into the uniqueness. And when it comes to the larger kind of showstoppers, it says their job is anchoring. When a customer sees a $65 piece, your $25 piece suddenly feels reasonable and your $38 piece feels like a steal. For strategic insights, it says here that a fantasy aesthetic is a pricing asset. Unconventional, enchanted, or original character designs command and justify higher prices more easily than generic amigurumi. Mistakes to avoid. The common handmade seller error is over-indexing on low-priced items out of the fear that no one will spend $35 on yarn. In reality, craft market shoppers who are there to shop will spend $35. They're not there by accident. A table of $8 to $12 items signals low confidence in your work and trains customers to expect everything to be cheap. This also echoed a similar display strategy of putting your anchor pieces at the highest visual point on your table. Put your $20 to $28 items at the sweet spot at arm level reach with the most visual variety, and put your $12 to $18 items at the front edge, easy to pick up, and your $5 to $8 items can live in a small basket or tray labeled clearly. Don't hide them, but don't let them dominate the visual. I really liked the things that both Gemini and Claude had to say when it came to the pricing strategies. And when it comes to price buckets, I actually like the Gemini buckets the most. I feel like I want to lean slightly more into that curated, artisan feel, but I do really need to do a price check to see if the things that I've made actually still fit into those buckets. My big focus just in looking at this, aside from like refilling my minis basket, of course, is going to probably be in the $20 to $40 range and a couple of really more expensive curated pieces. What I'm going to do is something similar to what I did a while back. I'm going to set up some tables. I'm going to bring out all of my inventory, put them into these price buckets as they exist today, and then start playing the shuffle game. If this one should be $12 and it's in the 10, we're going to scoot it over, move things around, and decide where we should be for each of these items. My thought is, if I'm really unsure, because I don't time myself, I do weigh them, so I do kind of know what material costs are. But if I'm unsure, I think what I'm probably going to try to do for funsies is assign like a difficulty rating off the top of my head, and then maybe kind of with that, see if that leans one way or the other as far as the price buckets. The last time I did this, I made a video about it. I'll link it here and shared that with you all. If you want to see it again, let me know. I'll probably film it anyway, just because I think it's very interesting to do these kind of exercises and I like watching other people do them. Not something that I'm going to do this particular weekend, but be on the lookout for that video coming up pretty soon. So many of the things that I've bought patterns for recently, I think will probably fit into those price buckets, but I'm not going to completely pressure myself to fill any one of these buckets at the moment because my crochet time is so limited right now. I definitely know, like I said, I've got to replenish the minis. That's a given. But other than that, I am going to go with what I feel like making, and some of those makes might take me the entire week and other makes might go a little bit faster. So I'm just going to have to kind of see where everything lands. If you have watched my videos for a while, you know that I am very much a planner, but for whatever reason, I am feeling like I want to take the risk, you know? If I end up with a table of very expensive stuff and nothing sells, I'm pretty confident I'll at least make my booth feedback. I'll have a really good time. And I don't know what it is. I'm just feeling this boost of like, I put energy into certain plushies like Clubs the Clown, and I just love them. And I think that they'll command a good price, and I think somebody's willing to pay it. And if they're not, I am willing to take the risk for some reason, so we'll see how that goes. I will either do really well or I won't, but either way, I'll learn something. As far as this week's makes, it happens to be one of those intensive makes, and I am not done yet, so I do not have anything to show you, but I'll have that done by next week's video and be able to share that with you then. Speaking of next week's video, that is actually going to be the financials. It'll be the last video in June. I have almost everything put together so that I can share those numbers with you, so be sure to stick around and check that out. Let me know what you thought about what these AI platforms had to say. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. I found it very insightful and actually kind of encouraging. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not already subscribed, please consider doing so. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.